This is a tamarisk, also sometimes known as a salt cedar. And they're native to Eurasia, the Middle East and southern part of Europe, Spain, Italy, I think, Greece, places like that. And they were brought to this country. I think the main reason they were brought here was to use them as windbreaks in the prairie. Well, they planted them, and things took over like crazy. And now they're considered a weed in most places. It's a really, really tough tree. They grow out in the desert. Places that flood in the wintertime, maybe the rivers in the winter when it's raining, or a big puddle or something. They get established in there, and then they just live there all year long. They just grow and grow and grow. So they're pretty tough trees. As a bonsai, it's kind of a high maintenance tree. Basically, the only style they suit themselves for is weeding style. And you wire it, put it in place, and you take the wire off. It's going to cut in, and you got to trim it, wire it again. You kind of always have to do that. So it's a good tree to practice your wiring on. Really, really delicate foliage. I'll tell you, driving 100 and some miles in a pickup truck with this in the back is great. Clean the tree up awesome. There was all this dead needles and stuff on it, and I left the nursery this morning. And now it's nice and clean. I'll remember that when I take my pine up to pensions. So anyhow, it's got this beautiful, delicate foliage. And in the spring, it gets a really, really pretty, delicate pink flower. And the wood is really, really hard. So they lend themselves to deadwood. And the contrast between deadwood and the delicate foliage and the delicate flowers is pretty cool. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of some stuff that I know we're not going to use and create some deadwood at the same time. I'm going to use this branch splitter, or trunk splitter here to split that. And tear that down. So, get rid of that one. When you're starting to design a tree, sometimes it's hard to figure out what you're going to do. First thing you do is get rid of the stuff you know you're not going to use. This branch way down here in the bottom, I know we're not going to use that, so I'm going to get rid of that. Same thing with this one. This one. This is another one that's too low, and I'm going to probably break that and make a little shari underneath of it, so I'm going to cut these branches off of it. Too low. Actually, it's easy to do too. There's not even much left of this when I get done.
Bob, did it naturally curve, or were you wiring it as it was in the ground?
It wasn't in the ground. It was always in a pot. It rooted into the ground for a while, which is why it got so big. No, it was probably on a stake. I don't wire them when they're in pots because, there's too many of them and they grow too fast and the wire cuts in. So we probably had it on a stake. Split that enough. Told you, it's hard wood. By tearing that like that, you get a more natural look eventually to the deadwood than if you carve it too much with a tool. Whenever possible, I like to not use power tools to create the deadwood. Okay. I think I'm gonna shorten the height of this, and this branch here is gonna be the eventual apex. And this is going to need to grow for a couple of years to get thicker and make a more believable taper, kind of like this did. And then create the top of the tree off of that. But, do that demo, so I'm going to be careful I don't do that now. actually might not, air layer that if I had time, and maybe move a tree out of that. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is work on the branches. I'm actually going to cut a couple more off. Wiring these things is a little bit difficult. When the branches are young like this, they're pretty flexible. And then they get to a point where they're a little bit bigger. That one's still flexible. But anyhow, they get to a point pretty soon where they're hard to bend and they'll break pretty easy. So you got to be careful wiring them. So, kind of decide here which branches to keep. Probably have to keep most of them, but not all of them. We had 2 branches coming from the same spot here. I'm going to cut this one off and keep this one because when I bend this one, I get one branch there, one there, one there, and one there. So it'll kind of make it look like it's got more volume than it really does. Generally, when you're trying to determine the front of the tree, you start by looking down here and find out, can you see this? And find out which is usually you start by looking for the widest point at the base and start from there and see, how the rest of the tree looks from that. Just take some bites out of the top here, kind of disguise the fact that it was cut a little bit. Also, add a little taper to this point. Gosh, this is hard work. I should have brought bigger tools. So, alright, it doesn't look like something that we chopped off the top and, with a nice flat cut there. So, and I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time refining the deadwood. Whoever wins the tree can let this stuff dry out and then work on it themselves. And I'm going to wire. We start with the 2 biggest branches. You always want to try to wire 2 branches at the same time with one piece of wire. First of all, it anchors them better, which is the most important thing for wiring, is that the branches are anchored. And you get less wire on the tree, so it doesn't look quite as much like an engineering project. One full turn around the trunk, and that really anchors that. So now I can do what I want with these 2 branches, and they're not going to move except for where I put them. All right, now, here I'm going to kind of twist the branch a little bit so you can create more volume out of this foliage here. When you're wiring a branch and the branch gets smaller, don't try to wire a small branch with a big wire. Change your wire size. From this side. It's important to have one hand supporting the branch and the wire as the other hand is turning the wire. Otherwise it's too easy to break a branch. And I see a lot of people sitting here playing with the branches and stuff before they wire them. And I see a lot of people break branches because of that. Yeah, we do a lot of stuff to the trees and they're relatively tough, but there are limits to what they can handle. So when you're getting ready to work with branches and bend branches and move them around, think about it in your mind first, and then just try to move the branch once. Don't keep moving the branch this way and that way too much if you can avoid it. Yeah, sometimes you do that. Sometimes you leave a branch that you know you're not going to use as part of the design of the tree, but you leave it as kind of just in case. Because you know, sometimes you break things, or sometimes you see something different as you're going along. All right. Now I'm going to start making it weep. Smack it. Let's start up here. And bring in what's going to be the apex branch down. By using wire, you can move these branches around so that when you take this one little skinny branch, you can actually fill up quite a bit of space with it. You gotta be careful. I usually talk under my breath when I'm doing this, and mumble and cuss, and sometimes stuff like that. But with this thing on, I gotta make sure I don't do that. Get the hell out of here. But then I think about the bills I have to pay. Yeah, really it's not. Ah, shoot. See what I mean about these things being easy to break? And unlike like a juniper, when you hear that first crack, you're usually okay, as long as you don't hear the second crack. These things don't give you that option of the second crack, they just kind of break. So when you bend them, you want to be really careful.
They used to be windbreaks. Do they break all the time?
Probably, but they grow so fast and they just regenerate. And, you know, I mean, probably didn't really matter. And when the wind's blowing through it, you know, the branches are flexible enough that they probably move with the wind. You're not trying, the wind doesn't kind of try to make them go against their natural growth pattern. See, I'm bringing the base of this up a little bit, and then making the bend.
Do you need some music?
Need some glue?
Some glue? No, that one's okay. The one thing, though, with the weaving style is the branches that form the weaves, you want it to come from the top of a branch. You see how this one is coming out on the side? I need to kind of twist this so that this is coming from the top of the branch. So just be nice to me and don't break. See, if you're nice to the tree, they usually cooperate. There. Just a little movement in it. Be careful with this branch. Whatever gets this tree, be a little bit careful with that branch.
Put a tape on it.
And you know what? If it breaks, it really doesn't matter. A new one will grow. It'll only break wherever the break is. Keep this part, new stuff will grow from it, so it doesn't really matter. It's one cool thing about this tree. They grow like crazy.